I'm Professor Arie Orenstein, 75 years old. I'm a physician, a surgeon, and especially a plastic surgeon. I was employed by the Shiva Medical Center since '72. I was the chairman of plastic, reconstructive, and burn surgery for over 20 years. At the beginning of the 90s, I founded the Advanced Technology Center of the hospital, which was the first one in the medical system in Israel, bringing physicians, scientists, industry, and funding together under one roof. The idea is to develop the new technologies in IT, imaging systems, as well as pharmacy, and develop new startups which actually will enable us to make business out of the know-how, of the intellect of the physician and the scientists in the hospital. Just last year, we founded 4 startup companies outside the hospital. The IP belongs to the hospital, but it was out-licensed to the private companies. I'm involved in 5 directories outside the hospital, in the private companies. I'm a member in the largest investment club in Israel. 650 angels are investing in this company. I'm responsible for the bio companies. So I'm doing about 10 due diligence each month to check and find the appropriate companies to invest in. Since 1 year, I took place at the HighBreed Biomed company, and I am the CTO of the company. And my actually duty is to find the most interesting technology in plants and cannabis as medical drugs in the future. The problem with cannabis is that its image is totally damaged along the last years, since it was psychoactive drug which was commercialized by gangs, and therefore the image is totally damaged and destroyed. In the last decades, a lot was done on a scientific level in many academic institutions, especially here in Israel, trying to understand the mechanism, the biomechanism, the biology of the effect of the cannabinoids on our biological effects. And surprising enough, it was totally changed the whole concept. It changed the whole concept of how cannabis actually drives different effects in the human body. It was found that at the first step, the receptors for cannabis exist in our body. We have different receptors which are sensitive to different cannabinoids, the plant's cannabinoids, but then on the second stage it was found that there are endocannabinoids in our body. And actually 3 systems, medical systems, are modulated by the cannabinoids, the endogenic cannabinoids. One is the inflammatory effect, the second is the immunological one, and the third one is the nervous system, which are all regulated, upregulated or downregulated by endocannabinoids, which means our body is controlled by cannabinoids, internal ones. it became so interesting since it can be controlled by us by different drugs that can actually control the endocannabinoids and reach the effects. I should give you just one example to understand how things were developed. The first stage is that we treat cancer patients by cannabis. What are the important effects? There are two effects. One, it's effective against pain. It reduces dramatically the pain of patients, of oncological cases. The second one, it reduces vomiting and actually improve the appetites of these patients, and the patients who are treated by chemotherapy are losing a lot of weight and therefore they lose their proteins. It's very important to reduce the vomiting effect, improve the appetite, and by increasing the protein in the blood, it enables them to overcome many of the problems. It became very obvious that it works in these two fields, so scientists began to measure endocannabinoids in different patients, and one of them was those with overweight. The endocannabinoids were checked in patients who are overweight, and it was found that they have very high level of endocannabinoids. Secondly, it was found that the receptors to the endocannabinoids are highly sensitive, much more than the normal ones. And therefore, actually, people are not able to control the overweight or by diets because the endocannabinoids drive them to eat. Having this discovery, scientists developed a cannabinoid which will be given as a drug to the patients and reduce their appetites. It was done, and it was very effective. The problem was that many of the patients got as a side effect depression, and few of them committed suicide. The whole project was immediately stopped, and then the idea was to develop another cannabinoid, but this time the idea was to increase the size of the molecule in a way that it won't penetrate the BBB, the blood-brain barrier, which means it will be effective peripherally and will reduce the effect of vomiting, of appetite. At the same time, it will not allow the molecules to penetrate through the BBB and therefore won't have the effect of depression. Now, as you understand, it's going in directions of producing drugs. The understanding of the biology, of the biochemistry, of the cannabinoids in the human body will enable us to develop new drugs which will actually change all our understanding upon regulations of inflammatory effects, immunological effects, and the effects upon the nervous system. Since we understand this idea, we as a company target ourselves towards few business models. The first one is the acute one, which means we want to produce as a business company compounds or so-called food supplements which will enable us to sell immediately in the short term and make an income on on the short term. This idea brought us to found a company which will deal with plants drugs or plants effect. We know for thousands of years plants were used as drugs. Cannabis for over 6,000 years. It's a long story of using it as a formulated drug to different medical applications for many years. Just in the last 150 years, it was changed and it became a psychoactive drug. And therefore, it's actually ruined or damaged the whole name of this product. It stopped to be a medical problem, became a psychoactive one, which was used by gangs, and therefore the whole image of such an important compound was totally damaged. And therefore, we are trying to develop for the long term new products which will enable us to develop real medical compounds with all the regulatory rules needed to be medical product. Therefore, actually, what we do is to work together with academic institutions which are among the leading scientists in the world. One of them is Professor Arie Meiri at the Technion School. He is one of the leading scientists in the effects of cannabis on cancerous patients and how cannabis products can help people with cancer as a drug that will reduce or treat cancer. They actually founded a private company called Canasol, and we are in the final stage of signing an agreement with Canasol. So it will be HighBreed and Canasol company together developing products for IBD, intestinal bowel disease. Two actually medical phenomena. One is Crohn's disease and the other is ulcerative colitis. Both of them are, the etiology of them is inflammatory and immunological effects. As cannabinoids are effective on inflammatory effects and immunological one, they are very effective upon these two medical phenomena. So we are doing now big clinical experiments at the Ichilov Center, which is one of the biggest centers in Israel, in Tel Aviv. It will be a 3-year project, and we are going to test different cannabinoids products on about 1,000 patients with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. It's a huge project. I'm not going into the details of, but it's a basic science and clinical science as well. At the end of the day, we should have the solution for a final product that might be the best one for these two medical phenomena. Another medical phenomena which has also correlation to the intestine is with Professor Edward Sam. He is a general surgeon, and actually his profession is in the anal canal. He is a proctologist, and therefore the phenomena he is treating are hemorrhoids, fissura ani, pruritus ani, and fistula ani. All the three are treated either by different creams and systemic drugs, and if it's not effective enough, they do surgical procedures, which has a lot of problems, pain and complications. We actually designed a new cream combining few plants extracts and CBD infused into it, and we actually plan now to make a huge clinical experiment. We have done a pre-clinical, test which will give us the indication. We treated 15 patients with anal fissura and hemorrhoids, and the results were astonishing. Since over half of these patients were planned to go to surgery, all the 15 actually healed, no pain, and no surgery was performed, which was totally surprising. So these experiments under full regulation is going to be done in the coming year, and we hope till the end of the year we shall finish the experiment and come to a final result which will give us a product which contains both plants, extracts, and CBD infused into it. And this product actually augments one another. The plants extracts are augmenting the effect of the CBD, the anti-inflammatory and anti-immune effect, and they are much more effective at the end of the day. So this is the second scientific project which we are performing now. The third one is with the Hebrew University, with Dr. David Tam, Yossi Tam, with Dr. Yossi Tam, who replaced Professor Meshulam, Rafael Meshulam, who is the great scientist who actually discovered the existence of CBD and THC, its chemical entity, chemical buildup, and the endocannabinoids and the receptors in the human body. All was discovered by Meshulam. He was replaced by Dr. Yossi Tam, who runs today the big center of cannabis clinical effects. The lab actually have about 100 scientists there. It's one of the largest. And they actually perform different experiments to see how the cannabis affects different medical phenomena. We are at the end of an agreement in which we are going to perform experiments with our plant extracts and CBD. This is going to be used for the following clinical phenomena. The first one is metabolic disorders or metabolic endocrine system effects, which includes diabetes mellitus, fatty liver, overweight, and renal problems, which are actually side effect of the diabetes and overweight as well. The experiment is going to be performed first on tissue cultures, animal models, and the results at the end of the day of this basic science is going to be followed by clinical experiments with the new extract, and it will be a new patent which will enable us to be leaders in the whole metabolic syndrome. this is one experiment which we are now at the final agreement. We try to come now to agreement with two other scientists at the Hebrew University. One is on psoriasis, and the other one is infectious effects which can be affected, bacteria can be affected by cannabis. It's a new project. We are now at the beginning of discussions, but it might be that in the near future we shall come to an agreement with the Hebrew University on this project as well. The next project is done with the research and development of Arava. Arava is the south part at the desert Negev in Israel, and they develop few projects which we are now discussing how to be involved and cooperate with. One project is already almost at the final agreement, and this is using dates seeds for the treatment of neurological degenerative diseases. This is going to be again a 2 to 3 years project, and if it will succeed, we are going to cooperate together with them and build up a new project which is very, very interesting and might be a great business as well, if it succeeds. The next project we are now in discussion with is spirulina. Spirulina is an alga which is a superfood and has a lot of medical properties, including antioxidants, iron, and different vitamins as well. This superfood has a lot of effects, and it was used for the astronauts in the space. They took it because it contains 50% of proteins, which is quite surprising. And this is planned to be the future superfood for the whole globe. And therefore, we have now a discussion with a very, very promising company, which is already today producing almost 50 tons of spirulina here in Israel, and we try to come in conclusion with them how to produce different products out of spirulina or the native spirulina as well, all over the globe. It might be a very, very important project, but this is just at the beginning of discussions which we just began. Next project is the development of new strains of cannabis. As I explained before, the cannabis, most of the strains today were actually driven to have a psychoactive effects, because this was the application for making money out of a psychoactive drug. And therefore, the content of THC in these plants is the highest percentage, while the CBD is very low, because CBD has no psychoactive effect. Now, what we try to change is to build up projects with strains which have a very high content percentage of CBD, while the THC should be very, very low. These strains should also be driven to be very, very effective in its growth, its percentage, and its sustainability against bacteria, fungi, and the different parameters, surrounding parameters like temperature, watering, all of these parameters should be very well controlled. By this, we should be able to produce the most effective strains, the cheapest one, in a very easy way. We are now discussing this idea with two leading companies in Israel, which are global companies and are selling their products all over the world. And we try to see whether we should be able to come to an agreement with them to develop the new strains, and then in the growth project of producing cannabis in agriculture, we should be able to have the best strains available today in the world. This is in general different projects we are involved in. We hope to close most of these deals in the coming days. And on the way, there are a few other ideas. Time is too short to get into it, but we have a few other ideas to cooperate with few scientists and companies to produce other products which will enable us to make out of it huge businesses. The horizon is unlimited, and I hope that the team we have, it's really unique team. We have all our partners here are very, very experienced people in the legal points, in the marketing, in the medical one, in the scientific one, in the extraction. All these experienced people will give us the ability to build up a real company which will make a real change and won't be a bubble as many of the other companies are. Have a nice day. Thanks.